Hi, I'm Coach Helpless, and welcome to episode 19 of the Keeping It Real vlog. This is quarter two, week 8. This is the week of the $10 challenge exhibition, which took place on Tuesday. We've had a chance to finish and reflect a little bit. The event was a success. It's hard to quantify these things, and everything's stressful until they've happened. You really never know how they're going to go. It's what gives value to these things, the fact that there is room for failure. And I want to touch on basically what the kids talked about, in case throughout this process I haven't touched on all the things that the kids did. These are the screens that we had up while students were speaking. My student, one student that gave his $10 to a homeless person, like the day that I gave it to him, he immediately it was burning a hole in his pocket. He saw a homeless person and gave him $10, and then he chose to talk about what that was, what he was hoping for. I figured this guy could use this for this, and he could use it for that, and then he kind of reflected on the pros and cons of that, because as everybody else was getting into their projects and really thinking carefully, and some people were finding ways to increase their money, and some people were like really researching what they were going to do, he kind of realized that, maybe I should have thought this through more carefully, but he still felt good about having done what he did. So his speech kind of touched on, the pros and cons of that. Student gave hers to her grandmother with whom she lives, in addition to some money of her own that she was already trying to give her to pay bills. She added that to it, I think to help with the electric bill. And she talked about why it was important to her to contribute to her household in that way when her grandmother would do anything for her, and what it felt like to be able to support her. Student who had a neighbor in her same apartment complex and realized that she needed some healthcare products, and that she had a dog, and she just chose to help out this neighbor and just give a gesture of friendliness. So she talked about what that was like, and how it helped her feel better to do something nice for somebody. And even though she thought that maybe just giving her $10 of gifts to make someone's day better wouldn't be sufficient, but how much it could help. And I think she ended her speech with something like, small gifts mean a great deal when they come from the heart. One of my students gave to the James House, which is a shelter for domestic abuse victims, and talked about how she had witnessed domestic abuse in the past and how she researched this place. Talked about some of the struggles she had with getting a hold of them, and how sometimes being charitable and just trying to help people out can still be a challenge, and that now that she'd visited there in person, that she might be doing some volunteer work and helping them in non-financial ways. This is the student who made some masks to give to people who needed masks for COVID policies, and friends or family member who weren't wearing them when they needed to. He learned how to final cut and use a heat press to put them onto fabric, and gave them to some people, and as well as like buying some disposable masks. The student found a local organization, or an organization with a local chapter, I guess, that's called Buy a Tree, Change a Life, that helps to supply Christmas trees and other funds to people in need around the holidays. He talked about the basic research he did there, and having talked to them and visited them, and finding out what $10 can do to help somebody around the holidays. This is my group of 3 students. You see 2 of them in these pictures, who they purchased candy from the FBLA. This is Day, who's been part of my student vlogs, and B, you've heard from him a little bit. He's not in this picture, but Brandon, you see in these pictures, he's the one with the on the right here with the sandwiches in his hands. He was our MC, so you kind of know a little bit more about their struggle if you've been following the student vlogs. But yeah, they talked about what it was like to raise some money by buying things and selling them, and some of the benefits, the unseen benefits, like interacting with other people of different grades to sell them candy, and then what it felt like to go out and physically give things to people instead of just giving to a charity or just giving somebody some money, but to have some conversations with people. And so yeah, they gave those speeches, and our MC I'll talk about in a moment. Then my two young ladies that gave to the animal shelter, Tiana and Skii, talked about their experiences and what they were able to get together. I think they were able to get like 40 some pounds of dog food, and then you can see kind of in the picture here what they were able to gather. So all of that, and then I've got a few other kids. So I have a couple of kids who weren't there for different reasons. I'm going to focus on them next week. That's why I did not schedule the exhibition to all take place right at the last couple days of the semester. So focus on that next week. I want to focus on the ones that were there. Every one of these kids was terrified. Every one of these kids was in some way, shape, or form deeply uncomfortable with doing this, and they were quite satisfied afterwards to have come through and gotten done what they did, to say the least. One of my students, who was particularly adamant about never would she come to school after school hours, never would she speak in front of people. I found out, I kind of caught this. I wasn't looking for her. I was actually going to a classroom for a different reason, and she had her boyfriend recorded her speech, and she was showing it to somebody when I walked into that classroom, and she happened to be there. So I kind of caught her being proud of what she did. So that's a little gem, something to take away. And in their reflections, I asked them several things. And I basically asked them how it felt to have overcome things. I asked them if they could go back, what would they do differently, or what advice would they give themselves. And I asked them what was the most challenging. So I just kind of wanted to share at least the first part of that. The questioning was, you've overcome many obstacles in your way and delivered a successful public speech. How do you feel now compared to how you felt before? And several of my students still have to answer this, but the ones who have, I feel more comfortable to speak in front of an audience and great for helping my neighbor. I was nervous. Now I feel accomplished. I feel much better about it. It was nerve-wracking, but I felt at ease when I neared the end. And I feel relieved that I got it over with, and I learned to actually just start doing things. And some of the advice they would give themselves: never be afraid to go first, and procrastination doesn't get you anywhere. Don't be so nervous. Don't start late. If I could go back in time, I would tell myself that I need to take the pressure off myself and relax. It's okay to feel nervous or anxious. It's normal to feel that way. You're human. Don't fight it. And start on time. So those are some of the reflections I wanted to share from the handful of kids that have submitted those this week. We had a crazy end of our week, and I won't get into that, but yeah, that's where we are right now. Next week, I'll talk about how we handle the kids who didn't show up for the exhibition and how we're going to wrap up our semester and focus on planning for the next one. So tune in for that. Thank you.